So now we're going to talk about how to make a list. A list is basically a collection of variables or a collection of items in a variable that can store more than one thing at a time. So to make a list, we start out by doing what we normally do, make a variable. I'm going to call this list num list because it's going to be a list of numbers, and I'm going to hit OK. So now I have a variable in my variable list called numList. The way you turn this individual variable into a list is you use the set method, and I'm going to set numList to a list. And I'm going to go ahead and set numList to a list, and I'm going to put some numbers in here. So I'll put 5, and then if I hit the right arrow, I can put the next number in there, 6, and let's just put 5, 6, and 7 in there. So now I have a list that's going to be generated. It's going to hold the numbers 5, 6, and 7. So I'm going to go ahead and get a control command, and when we hit the green flag, we're going to see this list generated. So when I click the green flag, you will see that I've generated a list of numbers 5, 6, and 7. Now notice that there's some little numbers to the side of these numbers. This basically represents where in the list I'm at, and this represents the values of the item in that list. So in SNAP, we start indexing our objects with the number 1. So if I were to want to get to the number 5, I would use index 1, and that would allow me to have object 5. Index 2 is going to give me 6, index 3 is going to give me 7. So these values right here say, hey, this is where in the list I am. Notice I called them an index, and these are the things that are in that list at that spot. The actual way we will access these items is we will use the command item something of some list. So this is the icon for a list, and this is a pull down menu which can be replaced with a variable. So I can either from the pull down menu access the first, the last, or any, and that'll pick one randomly, and then this tells me what list I'm using at. So I think what I'm going to do now at this point is I'm going to make another variable. I'm going to call this variable index, and I am going to assign index a value of 2. So when I use the variable index, item index of numList, it should get me the second item inside of numList. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here for a looks command, and I'm going to say that number for 5 seconds. So this is all going to happen really fast. When I snap this in, when I click the green flag, this is all going to happen really fast, so we're going to have to pay attention to what's going on here. So by clicking the green flag, you can see that I'm saying the number 6. The reason I'm saying the number 6 is because I said item index, and index has a value of 2, of numList. So here's my numList. In my numList, the thing that's at index 2 was the 6. So every time I click the green flag, it's going to basically say the thing that's at the second spot. Since I want to get you used to working with pseudocode, let's examine how we would write the pseudocode for this particular block. So we've got set numList to 5, 6, 7. How do we represent that in pseudocode? So if we go to our pseudocode document, our exam document, we can see that there's some list operations that we already have access to. We've got the way to list an item at a certain index point. We've got a way to assign a list to another list, and then this is the one that I'm actually looking at. We've got a way to assign values into a list that we create. So we're going to be taking a look at this particular block right here, and we're going to make our assignment based on basically what this code right here says. Okay, so I'm going to have our list name, and then I'm going to have the back arrow, and then I'm going to list the values that went into the list. And this is the way that we would do that. We would, for our pseudocode, our variable name is numList, so I'm going to write that variable name here. This backward arrow right here means assign into numList. And the thing that I'm going to be assigning are the new numbers 5, 6, and 7. So this right here would represent this line of code. Then now we just want to set our index to 2. Well, remember, if we just want to make a simple assignment, all we have to do is write our variable name, the little back arrow symbol, and whatever it is we're assigning in there. So in this case, I'm just going to use our index variable name, and I'm going to assign it a value of 2. So index with the backwards arrow is going to represent 2, and that represents this block right here. Now finally we're going to have to do some output, and remember our pseudocode document uses the word display for output, and then we're going to have to make sure that we access the correct notation that says we're looking at the item in this list at index, and index is 2, so we would be looking at the 6. So 6 is what's actually going to print out, but we're not going to use 6. We need to use the pseudocode to show that we're getting the thing out of the list at index. So to do that, we're going to use a combination of display. Display expression is our output. So anytime we ever want to use output, we use the word display. And then the thing that we're actually displaying is our list name and a certain element within that list name. So we're not going to use list and I, because list refers to the list that we've made, our variable that we've used, and I is going to refer to what we're using to represent the index of that list. So in our case, we want to say item index of numList, so numList would be the list name. So we're going to display numList, and index represents our I. So we're going to say numList index. Now remember, index has an assigned value of 2, so that index really means 2 in this particular program. And numList is this list right here. And what's at spot 2 or index 2? Well, this is 1, this is 2. The thing that's at spot 2 is 6. So really what we would do is we would be displaying 6. And that's the pseudocode of what this particular. So you don't have to make list always with just numbers. So what I've done here is I've created a variable called fruit list. I'm going to keep using my index, and we're going to make a fruit list. So I'm going to set fruit list to the list, and I'm going to go ahead and put the following fruit in it. I'm going to put an apple, and then I'll click the right arrow, and I'm going to put a banana. And then I'm going to click the right arrow, and I'm going to put grapes. And then I'm going to click the right arrow, and I'm going to put orange. So now we have a list that's got objects in it, apple, banana, grapes, orange. So it's got different things in there instead of just numbers. Once again, I can decide which one of those I want to access by setting the index. So I'm going to change index to, let's do 2. Let's go banana. I think I'm going to wait 3 seconds so that I can have a pause to explain some stuff, and then we'll see what the rest of the program does. And then I'm going to go to my looks menu. Remember, if we want to do output, we can either do say or think. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, and then if I want to say the name of the object that's inside my list, I have to do 2 things. First of all, I have to know what list I'm talking about. So I'll need fruit list, and I'll have to know where I am in the fruit list, and in this case, I've represented that by my variable index. So if you use item 1 of list variable, and you put the index over the 1, and you put the fruit list in where the list goes, then that's what you're going to say when you use the say command. So I'll go ahead and put this out for 4 seconds so we can actually see it. And not only that, I'm going to do something cute. I've made costumes with my variables, so I'm going to go ahead and switch it to a costume that makes it look like a banana too. So when I run this program, not only is the sprite going to say banana, but it's going to be a banana. Alright, so here I have my sprite. Here I have the list that's going to be generated called fruit list. Here I have the value of the index, which currently is at 0. I'm going to click the green flag. You can see my list has been generated. Index was 2. He's going to say banana, and then he's going to turn into bananas. So that was a cute little program that allows you to access something out of your list at a certain index spot. So if I had changed index to 3, we would do grapes instead. So let's do that. Let's go back to the main program, and where I have set index to 2, let's change that to set index to 3. And now if I press the green flag, it's going to regenerate the list, and then it's going to change index to 3. It's going to say grapes, and then it's going to switch costume to the grapes. And finally, I want to illustrate to you the concept of creating a list that contains absolutely nothing, and then using some of our other commands to modify that list. So in SNAP, if I want to create a list that has absolutely nothing in it, so I'm going to go back to my numList variable, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set numList to, and I'm going to pull the list icon in here, but instead of adding stuff and typing stuff in, I'm going to go back one. This just tells me that numList is basically a list at this point. It just kind of identifies that as a list. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the add command. And so I'm going to start adding numbers to my list. Okay, so you need 2 things to be able to add. The first thing you need is you need an object to add. And in this case, I think I'm going to add a random number from 1 to 10 to my list. And what list am I adding that to? I'm adding it to numList. So I need to have the 2 things in here. I need to have what I'm adding, and I need to have the list that I'm adding it to. Now if I just snap this in there, that would only do it one time. I think I want to create a list of 10 numbers that range from 1 to 10. So now here's the code that's going to create a list, and it's going to add a random number from 1 to 10 to that list 10 times. So we'll have a list that's 10 units long, and it will contain random numbers from 1 to 10. So here we have the stage, and here we have our list called numList. I'm going to press the green flag, and you can see that some stuff got generated. And if I drag this all the way down here, you can see that I now have a bunch of numbers in my list, and they do indeed range randomly from 1 to 10. Notice, by the way, that the list has some information contained in it. The list knows how long it is. The list is a length 10 list. And other lists have shown up as length 4 or length 3 depending on how we've generated them. So now, of course, I've generated a list of 10 numbers from 1 to 10 using this code. Now let's actually get access to one of them. So I think what I'm going to do, and actually, you know what, let's get access to all of them. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a loop that will go through, and it will say each of the numbers in the list one at a time, starting with the first number and ending with the last number. And so I'm going to show you some tricks about how to do that. We're going to be doing something over and over again, so obviously that's a loop, and it's a repeat loop. So I'm going to drag in repeat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat. I need to expand the recording window here. I'm going to repeat over and over and over again based on how long my list is. So I'm going to use a command called length of, and it's got a list icon in it. You can determine what list you want to know the length of. So right now my list is called numList. So I'm going to do something called length of numList, and this will run, or this will produce a number that's as big as the numList. So in this case, if you remember when we looked at our list that was printed out on the stage, it had length down at the bottom and it was 10. So numList is currently 10. I'm going to put that in a repeat loop. So this loop is going to repeat 10 times. And then I'm also going to create the index. So I've got my variable index already. And so I'm going to set index. Now the first thing in a list is the number 1. So I'm going to start index at 1. And then I'm going to run this loop the length of numList times. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say whatever item I'm at a particular time. So I'm going to go to looks and I'm going to pull out the say command. And then I'm going to go back to variables and I want to say the index of the numList for 2 seconds. Now, if I just left this as it was, what would happen is this loop would repeat 10 times, but I would always only say the first number because index has been set to 1. So I need to increment index while this loop runs, because the second time I run through this loop, I want index to be 2. And I've put this in the wrong place, so let's move it. Let's see if I can actually move it over to the spot where it'll say. There we go. And so to increment index, I'm going to use the change index by 1 command. So when the first time this loop runs, I preset index to 1, but you'll see the index moving up to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then after 10 this loop will stop running. So go ahead and, if you need to, pause this a little bit and see if you understand this code. I'm going to move over to actually running the program, but if you need to pause this and take a look at this, you may. Alright, so here we have our sprite. Here we have a program that we're ready to run. When I rerun this, this list is going to change. And then we'll notice that index will become 1 as well. And then this sprite will start saying numbers. So let's see what happens when I click the green flag. Sure enough, we've said the first number is 7, which is at the first spot. Then we did 4, then 5, 9, 10. We should do 10 again. 4, 10, 1, and you notice that index is changing each time. And now that the program is finished running, index actually does go to 11, but we didn't say anything when index was 11, so that's not a big deal. That's not going to mess us up. So we started out with an index of 1, and we had a say index of numList. And then after we said 1, we went through the loop and we added 1 to our index. Our index becomes 2. So the index number is becoming all of these numbers, but index of numList is outputting these numbers. And that's basically how a list works, and that's how you access every element in a list, is you use a loop that's the length of the list. So now I'd like for you to go ahead and write the pseudocode of this particular thing. Now remember, you've got to set stuff and you've got num stuff, and just go ahead and make the pseudocode for this particular thing, and we'll go over it when you get finished with that. Alright, so here's the correct pseudocode for this particular block of code. We have the initialization of numList, so we're assigning an empty list to numList, and then repeat 10 times, and we're going to append. That's the command in our pseudocode for being able to add something to the end of the list and extending the list by 1. numList is the one we're appending, and random 1 to 10 is what we're putting in there. So this is the code for generating a random number. Then I'm going to assign a value of 1 to index. I'm going to repeat the length of numList times. So instead of doing 10 times, now I'm going to do the length of numList times. Then I will display numList at a specific index, and I will increment the index by 1 by adding 1 to index and then reassigning that to index. So that goes with that block, that goes with that block, this goes with this loop, this goes with this stuff right here, this assignment of index goes with that block, this repeat 10 times goes with this loop, and this assignment goes with that. I might have missed some parentheses in there, but you should get the gist of how to make the pseudocode work. Alright, so I'm going to send you a link to a shell setup of some code on Edmodo. what I want you to do is I want you to create a program in that shell from the following. I want you, and I've already done the first 2 bullet points for you. I want you to be able to ask the user for an index value and then assign that response to the variable that represents the index. And then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to be able to create a list of 10 random numbers, and then I want as output, as a say command, I want you to tell me the number that's at the spot that you put in. So obviously the number you enter in needs to be a number from 1 to 10, and then your program is going to say that number that's at that index. It should look something like this. Okay, I'm clicking the green flag. It's asking me what spot do you want to access. It hasn't generated a list yet. You'll see this list get regenerated. So I think I'm going to do the 6th spot. I'm going to hit enter. And so it generates a list, and as we can see, the list that's generated at spot 6 has the number 6. What a coincidence. And index is 6. If I run this program again, it'll generate a different list, and I can enter in a different value. You see that index changes. And so now it's generated this different list. My index is 3, and at index 3 I have the number 5, so that's what I'm saying. So this is the type of output that your program should have when you finish it. And this is your assignment. You can work on this for the rest of the period, finish it up for homework, bring it back to class. We'll talk about it tomorrow.